What if I told you that the wedding everyone called a fairy tale was actually the front door to a financial fortress? What if the real headline wasn't the designer tux? Wasn't the celebrity guest list? Wasn't even the million-dollar fireworks exploding over the ocean at the Palm Beach mansion? But the man standing quietly in the shadows? Nelson Peltz. Because while Brooklyn Beckham was smiling for cameras, while Nikola Peltz was glowing under chandeliers worth more than most people's homes, there was an empire watching. An empire built on boardroom takeovers, aggressive power plays, cold, calculated acquisitions. And insiders say, this empire doesn't do anything by accident. So here's the question nobody asked when the champagne was flowing.
Advice is stay the hell out of the press. I mean, so how much good did that do? But, that my daughter and the Beckhams are a whole other story. But I'll tell you, my daughter is great. My son-in-law, Brooklyn, is great. And I look forward to them having a long, happy marriage.
Did Brooklyn Beckham really know what he was marrying into? Or did he just walk into a billionaire chess game where every move was planned 10 steps ahead? Because Nelson Peltz isn't just rich. He's strategic. He's ruthless. And according to whispers coming out of Trian Fund Management, the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was positioning. And tonight, we're pulling back the velvet curtain. Stay with me. Because this story, it's bigger than love.
You've got to come down very hard on this. You really must come down hard and obliterate it. There's no room for it. There's no room for any of this stuff in America.
The thing about powerful men like Nelson Peltz, they don't chase attention. They manufacture it. And if you think the Palm Beach mansion wedding was just two young creatives in love, you haven't been watching the boardroom long enough. Because 3 weeks before the wedding, 3 weeks, Trian Fund Management quietly acquired a controlling stake in a struggling luxury retail conglomerate. No press conference. No flashy announcement. Just a subtle SEC filing at 4:57 p.m. on a Friday. That's not random. That's surgical. And according to a former executive who once worked under Peltz, someone who agreed to speak off the record over encrypted messaging apps, the timing wasn't a coincidence. Everything with Nelson is timing, the source said. Even weddings. Now let's rewind. Nelson Peltz wasn't born into billions. He inherited modest distribution infrastructure and turned it into something colder, sharper, more aggressive. Triangle Industries was his first real power statement. A mid-tier industrial packaging company nobody paid attention to until Peltz walked in, restructured leadership, sold off 3 divisions, and flipped it for 10 times its valuation within 6 years. That wasn't luck. That was leverage. And then came Snapple. You remember Snapple? Everyone thought Quaker Oats buried it. Dead product. Flat sales. Brand fatigue. Peltz saw something different. He bought it cheap. Rebranded it. Streamlined production. Cut 40% of middle management. And 3 years later, sold it to Cadbury Schweppes for an eye-watering payout that financial analysts still argue about on podcasts. He doesn't build companies. He re-engineers them. Now ask yourself this, when a man who treats billion-dollar corporations like chess pieces watches his daughter marry into global celebrity royalty, do you really think he's not calculating? Because Brooklyn Beckham represents something powerful. Not money. Influence. Global optics. Brand reach. The Beckham name carries emotional currency. Nelson Peltz deals in structural currency. Put those together, you don't just get a marriage. You get a merger. And insiders say the Palm Beach mansion ceremony felt less like a wedding rehearsal and more like a summit. Private security doubled 2 days before the event. Financial analysts were spotted among family friends. A private jet manifest listed 3 individuals tied to international venture funds, none publicly connected to the Peltz family. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's where it gets interesting. 2 months before Brooklyn proposed, Trian Fund Management opened exploratory conversations in European luxury fashion manufacturing. And guess which industry Brooklyn had just expressed interest in investing in? Fashion. Photography. Creative branding. Now pause. Is that mentorship? Or positioning? Because Peltz doesn't gamble. He aligns. He studies pressure points. He anticipates future leverage. And suddenly Brooklyn isn't just a newlywed. He's adjacent to capital machinery that restructures industries. Publicly, Nelson smiles.
Had my family been in the press lately? I haven't noticed that at all.
He calls Brooklyn a wonderful young man. He praises Nikola's independence. He tells late-night hosts he just wants happiness for his daughter. Privately, multiple former Tryon Fund employees describe Peltz as obsessed with legacy architecture. Legacy architecture. Think about that phrase. Not inheritance. Architecture. Designed. Structured. Reinforced. Which raises a dangerous little question. Was this union emotional? Or architectural? And before you call this conspiracy, consider this. Within 6 months of the wedding, Tryon Fund Management expanded media holdings in digital content platforms, 3 niche entertainment analytics startups, and 1 AI-driven brand reputation firm. That last one? Particularly fascinating, because controlling narrative in the digital era is worth more than oil. Now look at Brooklyn Beckham. Frequently trending. Constant headlines. Public perception swings weekly. And you're telling me the billionaire father-in-law who specializes in influence didn't notice that? Didn't analyze it? Didn't model its potential? Come on. Even the guest list screamed power calculus. Old money financiers seated near venture capital disruptors. Tech founders beside entertainment royalty. This wasn't random table placement. This was ecosystem mapping. One anonymous event planner later described the atmosphere as curated networking disguised as celebration. That's not romance. That's orchestration. And then there's Donald Trump. Once politically aligned with Peltz. Then publicly distanced. Yet still neighbors in elite coastal territory. You don't accidentally remain in proximity to former power brokers. Proximity is optional at that level. Unless it's strategic. Now here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Brooklyn Beckham has always been searching for identity outside his father David Beckham's shadow. Photography, cooking, fashion, reinvention. And into that search walks a family engineered for dominance. Peltz doesn't overshadow. He absorbs. He integrates. He optimizes. So when Brooklyn stepped into that mansion, chandeliers glittering, albino peacocks roaming like living status symbols, was he stepping into luxury? Or into infrastructure? Because the Palm Beach mansion isn't just a home. It's a symbol. 27 bedrooms. Private ice rink. Imported marble floors. Surveillance architecture more advanced than small corporate headquarters. This isn't wealth. It's fortress thinking. And fortress thinking doesn't relax. It plans. The more you examine the timeline, the more the lines blur between celebration and consolidation. Between affection and alignment. Between love and leverage. And we're only getting started.
I think it gets time to get used to it. Obviously it's not the best thing to see people writing not the nicest of things. We have each other's back more than anything. So I think we've just both learned to don't listen to that.
And just when you think this is all high society paranoia, the paper trail starts whispering. Because 3 days after the wedding footage flooded social media, Tryon Fund Management filed something unusual. Not a flashy acquisition. Not a public merger. A quiet restructuring of shell entities tied to offshore holdings. Now breathe. Shell entities aren't illegal. They are tools. But tools in the hands of Nelson Peltz? They become instruments. According to a financial blogger who tracks billionaire movement patterns like some people track celebrity outfits, the restructuring created what he called a consolidation corridor. Translation? Assets moving closer together. Media interests. Luxury manufacturing. Private equity stakes in sports analytics. And here's where it gets deliciously strange. Brooklyn Beckham's newly launched creative studio, the one critics mocked as another rich kid hubby, suddenly secured distribution partnerships faster than industry veterans twice his age. Coincidence? Or invisible scaffolding? One anonymous executive allegedly muttered at a Manhattan cocktail party, "Nobody moves that fast without air cover." Air cover. That's not mentorship. That's protection. And protection implies value. Because Nelson Peltz doesn't invest in sentiment. He invests in leverage. Meanwhile, Nicola Peltz appeared unbothered, posting minimalist aesthetic content, talking about creative independence, smiling in interviews about love and authenticity. But insiders say she grew up in a household where dinner conversations included hostile takeovers and shareholder revolts. You don't unlearn that language. You internalize it. And if you internalize strategy from childhood, you don't accidentally marry into global brand recognition. You evaluate it. The internet, of course, had opinions. "Oh please," one viral tweet read. "This isn't a wedding, it's a corporate merger with a DJ." Another comment racked up 200,000 likes. Peltz didn't gain a son-in-law. He gained global optics.
Come to our colleges, become our professors. And, we just think, it's kumbaya, everybody loves everybody, and this is what we got.
America, you're saying. It's our
Yes.
fault.
But the most interesting reaction? Silence. Major financial publications barely dissected the intersection. Entertainment media covered the dress, the flowers, the cake. No one deeply analyzed the capital choreography. And that's what makes it fascinating. Because when something that big avoids scrutiny, either it's boring, or it's intentional. Then came the dinner photo. You've seen it. Long table. Candlelight. Silver reflecting like liquid currency. But zoom in. Two individuals seated near Nelson were senior partners from venture funds that recently increased exposure to European lifestyle conglomerates. 2 seats down from Brooklyn. Random seating? Or symbolic positioning? A former event coordinator later claimed seating charts were revised 4 times in the final week. 4 times. That's not casual. That's calibration. And then, the whispers about Trian's internal memo. Unverified. Unconfirmed. But circulated in financial chat rooms. The memo allegedly described the next generational integration phase. Integration of what? Family? Assets? Influence? No one knows. But the phrasing alone sent amateur analysts spiraling. Now let's talk about Snapple again. When Peltz revived it, he didn't just boost profits. He weaponized branding. Limited edition releases timed with cultural moments. Scarcity tactics. Influencer alliances. He understands narrative cycles. So imagine applying that same precision to public perception, to family alignment, to legacy building. Brooklyn Beckham's brand has always fluctuated between curiosity and critique. But recently, the commentary tone shifted. More serious features. More business-focused interviews. Less tabloid mockery. And right on cue, Trian Fund Management expanded quietly into digital reputation analytics. One tech insider allegedly joked, Peltz doesn't fix companies. He fixes trajectories. Trajectory. That word again. It's not about today. It's about direction. Now let's zoom out. The Palm Beach mansion isn't just extravagant. It's layered with symbolism. Private hockey rink, discipline. Peacocks, spectacle. Fortified gates, privacy. Everything about the estate screams controlled environment. And when you grow up inside control, you recognize when it's expanding. One neighbor reportedly described increased private security rotations post-wedding. More SUVs. More tinted glass. More discretion. For a wedding that was already over. Why the upgrade? Because maybe the event wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. And let's not ignore Donald Trump. Once publicly aligned with Peltz. Then publicly distanced. Yet still geographically adjacent. Political proximity is never accidental at that altitude. You don't burn bridges. You repurpose them. Some commentators speculate the distancing was optics. Others insist it was genuine disagreement. But Peltz has survived multiple market storms without losing structural footing. That's not emotional volatility. That's calculated adaptability. Meanwhile, Brooklyn's ventures begin intersecting with sectors Trian has eyes on. Luxury branding. European distribution. Creative production partnerships. Is he being guided? Supported? Or strategically positioned? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When billionaires talk about family, they mean dynasty. And dynasty isn't sentimental. It's structural. The public sees romance. The boardroom sees expansion. The internet laughs at conspiracy. But history tells us something simple. Power consolidates. It doesn't scatter. And when 2 globally recognizable surnames combine under one architectural strategist, you don't get randomness. You get alignment. So here we are. A wedding that looked like a fairy tale. A father-in-law known for precision timing. A groom stepping into influence ecosystems far beyond photography and fashion. And a capital machine that rarely moves without purpose. Ask yourself one thing. If Nelson Peltz truly operates like the analysts say, if Trian Fund Management thrives on long-game integration, if every acquisition is mapped years ahead, then what exactly did the wedding secure? Love? Legacy? Or leverage? Because the deeper you dig, the quieter it gets. And when it's this quiet at the top, something is definitely moving. And just when you think the smoke has cleared, the pressure starts building. Because power doesn't expand quietly forever. At some point, it creates friction. And friction creates heat. Within a year of the Palm Beach Mansion spectacle, Trian Fund Management found itself facing an unusual pattern, not scandal, not collapse, but scrutiny. Subtle, measured, whispers inside regulatory circles about cross-sector concentration. Financial commentators began asking whether Peltz's growing ecosystem, media analytics, luxury distribution, creative branding pipelines, was becoming too vertically aligned, too efficient, too interconnected. One market analyst said during a late-night finance segment, when one family touches manufacturing, media perception, distribution, and celebrity branding simultaneously, that's not diversification. That's architecture. Architecture again. There's that word. And architecture attracts attention. Suddenly, opinion columns appeared questioning whether billionaire dynasties were reshaping cultural markets under the guise of lifestyle expansion. They didn't mention Brooklyn Beckham by name. They didn't accuse Nikola Peltz of anything. But the implication hovered like perfume in an expensive hallway. Influence consolidation. And then came the shareholders. A small but vocal group within a Trian subsidiary demanded transparency regarding recent restructuring moves tied to international holdings. Not illegal, just layered. The kind of layered that makes analysts squint. Peltz responded the way he always does. Calm, measured, unbothered. In a quarterly call, he stated, "Our strategy remains disciplined, long-term, and aligned with value creation." No defensiveness. No elaboration. That's the thing about Nelson Peltz. He doesn't over-explain. He lets scale speak. But scale also attracts critics. On social media, the narrative split in two. Team romance, they are just in love. This is ridiculous. Team strategy, nobody at that level does just. Memes exploded. One viral post showed a wedding altar photoshopped into a corporate boardroom. Caption, "Till leverage do us part." Funny, but satire usually reflects anxiety. Meanwhile, Brooklyn Beckham's ventures became more polished, more structured. Suddenly, his creative studio wasn't a punchline. It had serious partners, serious budgets, serious distribution. Industry insiders began using a new phrase, Peltz adjacent advantage. Meaning? Doors open differently when Trian hovers in the background. Now here's where tension spikes. Rumors circulated, unverified, but persistent, that European regulators were reviewing a potential merger connected to Triangle Industries' extended network. Nothing criminal, but complicated. And complications invite spotlight. Financial television debated whether Trian Fund Management's expansion model bordered on cultural monopolization. Strong word. Monopolization. Peltz's defenders fired back. He revitalizes industries. He saves dying brands. He creates shareholder value. Critics countered. He centralizes influence. He engineers ecosystems. He's building something bigger than companies. And somewhere in the middle of that storm, Brooklyn and Nikola remained publicly serene, posting curated moments, smiling at art events, launching collaborations, unbothered, or strategically silent, because silence, in powerful families, is rarely accidental. Behind the gates of the Palm Beach mansion, renovations reportedly began on a new wing. Not a ballroom, not a spa, a media production facility. Small, private, advanced. Why would a billionaire investor add an in-house content hub? Control the narrative. At least, that's what speculation suggests. When perception becomes currency, owning the mint matters. Then came the unexpected tremor. A mid-tier Trian investment underperformed dramatically after overexpansion in a volatile tech segment. Minor loss in billionaire terms, but symbolically significant. Because for the first time in years, headlines questioned Peltz's infallibility. Has Trian overreached? Is the empire expanding too fast? The market loves confidence, but it loves doubt even more. Stock fluctuations followed. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to create tension. And tension invites vulnerability. Some whispered that aligning too closely with celebrity ecosystems exposed Trian to reputational volatility. When influencers trend, markets react. When tabloids speculate, brand equity shifts. And maybe, just maybe, merging celebrity narrative with capital infrastructure introduces unpredictability. Because fame is emotional. Markets are ruthless. And combining the two? That's combustible. Donald Trump re-entered the conversation when he made a vague public statement about corporate elites shaping national narratives. He didn't name Peltz. He didn't have to. Political commentators immediately connected the dots. Old alliances resurfaced in headlines. Old photos recirculated. Old fundraising dinners re-examined. The internet thrives on déjà vu. Suddenly, the wedding that once symbolized glamour now symbolized alignment. Alignment between entertainment royalty and financial architecture. And when alignment looks too seamless, people assume orchestration. The ultimate question began echoing louder. Not in tabloids. Not in gossip blogs. But in business forums. What is the endgame? Legacy for Nicola? Stability for Brooklyn? Expansion for Tryon? Or something more systemic? Because Nelson Peltz has never played short games. He acquires, integrates, optimizes. He doesn't drift. He constructs. And construction requires blueprints. So what does the blueprint look like 5 years from now? A family media conglomerate? A cross-continental lifestyle empire? A generational dynasty blending celebrity optics with capital precision? Or will the friction crack the marble floors of the Palm Beach mansion? Will scrutiny intensify? Will regulators tighten definitions? Will shareholders demand simplification? History teaches one brutal lesson. Empires don't collapse overnight. They strain first. Hairline fractures, narrative tension, public skepticism, then adjustment, or rupture. And right now, Nelson Peltz stands exactly where he always has. At the center, calm, unapologetic, strategic. Brooklyn Beckham stands beside Nicola Peltz, smiling, building, expanding. But the world is watching differently now, not as fairy tale observers, as pattern analysts. And when audiences shift from admiration to analysis, the game changes. So the question isn't whether the wedding was real, or whether love exists. The question is whether love was the headline, and leverage was the subtext. Because in a world where billionaires architect ecosystems and celebrities amplify narratives, the most powerful moves are the ones disguised as celebrations. And if this truly was just romance, then it might be the most brilliantly timed coincidence in modern high society history. Or it might be the opening chapter of something much larger. Either way, the empire is no longer invisible. So now I'm leaving this in your hands. Was this just a wedding wrapped in chandeliers and champagne? Or did we witness the soft launch of a dynasty-level power alignment? Because when Nelson Peltz moves, markets shift. When Tryon Fund management restructures, industries feel it. And when celebrity royalty collides with strategic billions, that's not gossip. That's gravity. Brooklyn Beckham may have married for love. Nicola Peltz may have chosen her partner freely. But history shows us something uncomfortable. At the highest levels of wealth, nothing exists in isolation. Every alliance echoes. Every partnership expands influence. Every celebration signals something. So what do you think? Coincidence or calculation? Romance or restructuring? Fairy tale or framework? Drop your theory in the comments. I want to know which side you're on, team love or team leverage. And if you think this story ends here, you haven't been paying attention. Because when empires evolve, the real moves happen after the headlines fade. If you enjoyed this deep dive into power, perception, and billionaire chess moves, make sure you hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Because we don't just cover weddings here. We decode empires. And trust me, this one is still unfolding.